What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Logic Bomb Podcast, episode 28. And in this episode, we are joined by Reaper. Reaper is a fellow content creator, streamer, and YouTuber, as well as he's spent some time coaching and being analyst for pro teams. Makes really good in-depth strat breakdowns. So definitely somebody we're really excited to have on and pick his brain, I guess you could say. But I think what we're going to get into here first is talk a little bit about some of the matchmaking that exists in Rainbow Six Siege. That's what we're going to kind of open up with. We'll talk about the majors coming up. EU and NA both play this week. We'll talk about some of the latest news and tidbits within Siege. All that's going to be coming, but we wanted to talk a little bit about matchmaking first because I think that's always something that's a hot button. Everybody kind of feels like, what is this matchmaking? And Alex, you were saying before we went live here that you've done a lot of reading and research to really understand exactly how matchmaking works, and maybe there might be some weak spots there, huh? Is that what you were saying?
Let's just say it's almost impossible to. So actually, Reaper and I joined in on a tweet. I can't remember who initiated it or what it was really about, but it was about matchmaking. But it's hard to find any kind of thing to value more than win or loss. I think it was in response to the MMR update post that Ubisoft did, where, in all fairness, I think it was really poorly formulated because they said it doesn't matter if you get 15 kills and lose because clearly you aren't good at winning, and it doesn't matter if you get 0 kills or it does matter if you get 0 kills and win because clearly you're better at winning. Depending on how much you take that comment to its extreme, there is some sort of truth to it, of course, because if you're getting 15 kills every single game and you're never winning anything, those kills clearly aren't going towards something productive. Maybe there are 3 exit kills in every lost clutch, right? And on paper, when you just see the scoreboard, it looks good, but it had nothing to do with progressing the game or trying to win. And I mean, we can see that in competitive as well. You can have people that don't really get a lot of frags, but the team still ends up winning. And you can have people that get quite a lot of frags and the team loses, right?
Can I throw something in there? Because, okay, I agree with that statement. But I feel like I agree with that statement when you have a competitive 5-stack against a competitive 5-stack. When you start talking about solo queuers and random teammates against 5-stacks and stuff like that, that's where that statement isn't necessarily true. You can get 15 important frags every game as a solo queuer, and if you have the worst teammates, then you're not you can lose.
Okay, so if we do a little bit of statistics on that, let's say you are capable of doing this.
Right.
So you can drop 15 kills continuously.
Yeah.
You are 1 out of the 10 players. There is a better chance of you having one more good player in your team that could do that than on the other team because you already fill one of those spots. So if we say there's just a chance of 3 or 4 people that are this good that would ever be in the same rank game at the same time, there's a bigger chance of you getting 1 more than the other team getting 2.
Yes.
So over a big sample size, you should still climb.
Yes. You're absolutely right there.
That's the only thing that matters.
You're absolutely right there, but I do think to make a blanket statement that if you get 15 kills and don't win, that means you're not good at winning. It doesn't hold necessarily true in every single scenario. Maybe we can just leave it there.
I think what's also kind of crucial is that people are really bad at remembering stuff, right? Like humans in general, right? Like there will be games where you get 20 kills and you lose, right? But you remember those things because they suck, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at it objectively, you are going to win a lot of these games too, right? Like, I think if you look at the average, you're just going to win games where you get 15 kills. Like 15 games, getting 15 kills as a player is winning, right? And I feel like this kind of biased remembering really screws up a lot of the discussion around ranked in general, right? Because it also applies to people, gaining +2 MMR for a hard-fought victory. Right? But they just don't remember the times where they also got 20, 30, right?
Yeah.
That screws up a lot of the discussion.
So when people, I tried this on stream just for fun. When people came in and said, dude, I'm always dropping, double digits and I just get bad teammates. just for fun, for like a week, I asked people like, okay, let's look at it. We can pull most of the numbers up and we can see like your KD performance over games and stuff. And it's not true, because people have like 2 or 3 games where they got double digit and they played well. They lost one of them, and as you say, that's the one they remember, right? But all of the other ones, like they're losing a game here where they have 0.6 KD, and they're winning one where they have 2, and it all kind of makes sense. And it even adds up as far as when people say, I always lose more than I gain. No, you don't. you just don't. If you look over like a long time period, that's not true. People, like, they're pretty 50-50, man. Unless you're in the extreme, and that's another problem, because when we get to the extreme, it's a little bit more vocal there. So if you look at like the top competitive players or a lot of the top streamers that are playing in the really high rank, it's a very small pool of people they're playing against, right? And they're playing every day for a living. So they have way more ranked games than most other people, and they're always playing at the high end. A little bit more stream snipers, cheaters that are going to happen there as well. So their experience is not really 100% reflective of what it is to play in just below that bracket and all the way down. Macy yesterday, I played with him a bit. He said he'd been playing solo queue on an anonymous account to Diamond, and whole different game for him, like completely different. And sure, it's not a big sample size and it's just anecdotal, but it's kind of true, man. Like that gap there is quite big, and your experience in, let's say, champ or high diamond, with the chance of running into cheaters, just meh people, is just a little higher than it is anywhere else, because it'll filter to the top, right?
Yeah.
And then if you play, let's say, 500 games, the whole certainty rating thing is gonna kick in, and you're just gonna win and lose less points at the end. Then you'll meet people that are boosting up there with unranked accounts and stuff, and then you're gonna lose a lot of points to them. But that's not necessarily just a fault of a system. That's just people abusing a system. Because and that's what you're saying with the 15 kills. I agree, man. Like I've definitely had maybe 1 or 2 games where I felt like I should definitely win. But I've also had games where I won where I shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. Where my performance wasn't good enough.
Right, and I've done that with random teammates. I've had random teammates bail me out, about whenever I'm solo queuing and I get 2 kills. I go 2 and 6 and I still win. You know what I mean?
Sometimes we're the bad teammates.
Right, yeah.
Right? Like, no matter what.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. I think that, like, the key thing here is just that, like, single games just don't matter. It's just that, like, the only thing that matters is the average, right? The long run average. Nothing else matters. And in the long run average, there are no bad teammates, right? Like, the population of bad players is like the same, and the chance of them getting into your team or in the other team is just exactly, it's not exactly the same, but it might as well be, right? Like, over a long enough time span, the only consistency in your games is yourself, right? And that's kind of the thing that matters here, I think. And I think that most people don't kind of realize that, because they're not looking at the average, because they're kind of, the judgment is clouded by like outliers.
Well, it's also you care a lot. It's the whole losing feels twice as bad as winning feels good, right? That game you lose, and it's the same when, we talked about that earlier on. You misremember cheaters, because you can play 10 games in a day, and if you had 1 cheater, you're gonna remember that game over all the other games because you got cheated out of something, and that feels extra bad because not only did you lose, you lost unfairly. So that really sticks with you for much longer. With the whole system, like, if you, as you say, if you average everything out, the win-loss has to be the best thing to look at in terms of if you should get points or not. Because I cannot see, and if any of you have any idea, or if anyone in the comments get any idea, of what other factors you could look at, because points would be abused. Can't be done. You're going to find people just barricading over and over and over again to get the 5 points on defense. Kills, absolutely useless, because what if I'm the Monty pushing in, even in a 5 stack? Like, we've had games where we 4-0'd, right? And I maybe get 1 kill as Monty, and we have our fragger get 10 kills, but 9 of the people he shot were punching my shield. So how do we make an algorithm or something that can value you telling me wall bang, crouch height, left side?
I think that's kind of the thing, right? Like a lot of the skill also just happens totally outside the game, right? Like just communication, right? That's entirely outside the game, and there's no way you could ever even measure that. And then
by win and loss.
Yeah, like that's kind of the thing, right? As a proxy, right? Everything, and that's why I think that's measuring win and loss is like the superior way, because everything that's important, like what is skill, right? Like skill is everything that contributes to winning, right? And winning is measured by who won the game. So everything that could be measured is already measured by proxy by win and loss. And I think that just makes a lot more sense, right? And you kind of dodge that whole problematic of how do I value kills, right? Like obviously kills are important, but what's the kind of multiplier on the elo game? I don't think there's a real way to do it, right? Even the things you can measure, and then there's the stuff that you can't even measure, right? So I don't see it.
Think about all those kills. Like here's what I imagine would happen if kills were weighted into how much elo you or MMR you gained or lost. So you're down, you go down 2-0, or 0-2, and you all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, we're not going to win this game. Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the roof. I'm going to sit there until it's a 1v5, and then I'm going to get my 2 or 3 kills and still lose the round after I get my 2 or 3 kills, and I'm just going to bait basically and hope that I get enough kills in order for yes, I still lose, but maybe I got enough kills to where I end up, maybe breaking even as far as MMR. Like there's so many ways to manipulate that. The only thing I would say, what about KOST that they use in, for is that, because I know like Valorant, if we look at another game, Valorant is taking personal performance into the equation, but they have a couple.
Very little though.
What's that?
Very, very little.
And only in the beginning, I believe, too. I think that
after the high and low ranks, only at the high. Well, they do it for the whole game, but they do it more at the higher and low ranks, and the less you've played. And it's to combat really good players starting out, destroying and making the experience bad for the new players. So there's nothing in the high end to like help you climb further than that. It's only meant to protect the young players.
Do we know how they do it? Did they publish it, or is that hidden to avoid abusing?
Fairly transparent about they are going to look at your individual performance, so your kills and your deaths.
Well, they have a combat score on there that's made up of something, right?
Like but so that's your abilities, how much damage you do, your assist points, all of that. Same as CS, where you'll get an assist after 30 damage on a target if he dies to the next player. And they look at all of that, and the earlier on you are in the game, like let's say you're let's make it into Siege and you're silver and you dropped 20 frags. Clearly you are much better than the average silver. So you'll get maybe double MMR for that one game. Just to test if next game are you going to do the same. If you do the same, we'll keep pushing you up until you start having to struggle, right? Because there's a really good game developer conference talk about MMR, how it works, where if you like, the worst thing you can ever do is base things off KD, because the one thing you're gonna have happen is everyone's just gonna go to 1 KD, and now everyone's stuck. Like there's no way of climbing. Nothing will really happen. If you're a 2 KD player, you're gonna keep being pushed up until you're playing against other 2 KD players, and both of you are not gonna be able to have the same.
Right.
You're taking it away from someone. So that system of like balancing out skill just will not work in a team sport or a team game. If it's a 1v1, everything becomes really easy, because then we can just use old chess elo. And what we have in Siege, I know that's semantics and it doesn't really matter, but we don't have elo in Siege. We have MMR. Elo is the system by, I can't remember his name, but he made it for chess in like long ago, and he did the first, like there's only 2,000 good chess players. He did all of the stuff manually on paper, right? You just look at who's winning and who are you winning against and what was their place, and then you do the points on that, and that's the only thing that matters.
Elo sounds so much cooler than MMR, though.
It does.
It does.
It does. Like, I'd rather say Elo
Yeah.
than MMR.
It also, most people, like, I mean, we all know what we're talking about if we say
Yeah.
Elo, right?
Yeah.
But you need more factors. So while people can meme about it all they want, something like TrueSkill, the Microsoft TrueSkill stuff, theirs is proprietary, and it's something you have to buy the rights to. But there are plenty of systems that work pretty much just like it, where you have a certainty vector and you have your spot and basically who you're winning against. So you do some math on the points on the other team, the points on your team, and then if your system is good, you should be able to sit and predict and say, Team A has a 75% chance of winning against Team B. And over 1,000 games, those predictions should be pretty damn close to accurate. If you have a system where no one has a Smurf account, everyone plays over 50 games, something like TrueSkill is like 98% accurate in the estimate of the percent you have of winning. That's pretty decent, to be honest. So if they say you should have let's say a gold has a, 70% chance to win against a silver, he should only win 7 out of 10 games, right? And if no one had secondary accounts and we all only played ranked and we only solo queued, it should be somewhere around 90-something% accurate, the system.
And that does apply to... Oh, never go. Go ahead.
No, sorry. The massive issue, at least in my opinion, I don't know how big this is or if this is something I'm making up in my head, but think about how many people have more than one account. They have to play 10 placement games. They might not be playing the same rank on that account. Now you start diluting the system. So first off, in something like Siege, you need to play 50 matches for the certainty rating to be anywhere near like calibrated, right? Around 50 games for TrueSkill to have an idea of where you are. And I don't know how much of TrueSkill they're using, but at least if you read up on how TrueSkill works, it needs around 50 inputs before it has a good idea. Now, what do you do if you're playing, 40 games on your main over a season, and you're playing 30 games on another Smurf and 20 games on another? Then you've diluted the system quite a lot. And how many people are doing it, right? Does everyone have a second account?
Yes.
And if they are, then we already
everybody has a fourth
half as
account
effective,
at this
right?
point.
Fourth account. But that's a pretty big problem if you want to have a serious matchmaking system. Overwatch had a big problem with their 500 or top 500, where a lot of people in the top 500 had more than one account in top 500. Now it's no longer top 500; it's top 250, right? Just more people have a second account there.
Yeah.
And with Siege, if you start diluting champ, diamond, all the way down, right? Now all of a sudden you have a diamond player who's messing around in gold. He's going to affect, like, over 50 games, he has a pretty negative impact on the experience and the rank of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Then on top of that, you factor in cheaters, which when caught, at least it nullifies. But what you've grinded up might, go away because the person started cheating later on. And you mentioned that in a tweet as an issue, and that is a real issue. But how do you combat it?
Well,
and can you?
Let's come back to that if that's okay, because I want to talk I
sure.
want to carry on with this matchmaking a little bit. There's one thing there that you mentioned that I think is worth pointing out right now, because I'm in 100% agreement with you that, like, Smurfs are negatively affecting the game, I think, more than what we realize. When you combine all the alternate accounts out there and all the games they have to go through to get placed in where they should be. And I've been somebody who's been on record many times saying that as long as Smurfs or alt accounts are trying to win every game, then eventually they're going to end up where they're supposed to be. And while that is true, there's a lot of victims along the way that they're playing against that they probably shouldn't be. But what's helped that, in my opinion, is, and this has to do with matchmaking, is that this season we no longer have a global rank. So what you're saying used to be true times 2, because not only on your Smurf, you could go to your Smurf and you could do that, but you could also do that exact same thing in how many different regions. So you could do that again in EU, you could do that in NA, depending on where you lived. Maybe you could do that in APAC. I don't know, but the problem used to be worse than it is, but it's still definitely, I think that the global rank has helped that significantly, I guess, is what I'm getting at there.
I mean, mathematically, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But I've never seen as many low-level accounts as I do now.
Oh my God. It probably
Probably.
actually encouraged people to make more Smurfs if you think about it, because whereas maybe on one account, I used to be able to, if I want to Smurf, I'll just go to EU and then I'll play differently there. You know, now I can't do that because it's all one rank. So I got to create a Smurf in order to have a different account or a different experience.
I wonder if you could use some more like specialized metrics just to identify Smurfs, right? Not to influence the rank, but just to identify Smurfs, right? Like you keep MMR as normal, only taking win and loss into account, but you identify Smurfs using kills, right? And you flag those Smurfs and you like increase their uncertainty to an insane amount, giving them like an insane amount of points per win until they are like where they are supposed to be.
I'm pretty sure that's what Valorant does.
I guess. Because I guess
Valorant is right. So you're only allowed to have one account, and you have to. I think you have to VPN to have a second account. I think.
Unless you would use a VPN, right? You could get by that with a VPN.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You have to VPN.
Okay, yeah, I got you. Yeah, no, that sounds good to me. I guess let me ask you guys. Let me put you on the spot. Should personal performance affect your MMR gain or loss or your rank?
No, not in general.
Unless you have a solo queue system, then no, and even then, it should be some super secret proprietary stuff that we should never be told.
Right, I agree with that.
If they know, it will be abused.
Yep.
So publicly, no, never.
Yep. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's also actually an interesting point because like Ubisoft is not required to tell us what is actually happening under the hood, right? Like they could be running an entirely different setup that just seems like it does what it does. And in a way, if they wanted to, they could factor in personal skill, right? Just they don't need to tell us.
I mean, they could, but like the math is pretty clear, right? Like if we just take the MMR of everyone in the team and we take your MMR and we look at your uncertainty, basically your matchmaking rating is pretty much just your uncertainty or your certainty rating times 100 or something, right? So if you are 5,300 ELO or MMR, you have the or not uncertainty, sorry, your skill rating is just going to be 53. Yeah, and then you have your certainty rating next to that, and those are the two factors that are measured when you do the win-loss. I don't think they could sneak in performance there without people noticing it.
Do you think so? Do you think people would actually notice?
Yes, there's too much stuff. As long as their API is open, someone somewhere would figure this out. If they were to close their API, so like all of these tracking sites don't work anymore, then they could probably do it. But as long as you can see all of that, you can see your entire matchmaking history. You can see who you like. Actually, I don't think you can see who you've played against. But you could do that during the game, and you could track that with like I think our 6 tracker allows you to track everything, like each game, and even go back and see who you played against and all of that. There's no way they'd get away with that. There are too many people out there trying to sit and figure out how it works. And it would be too lucrative to make a video, saying, just spam barricade to get diamond.
If there's one thing that's true about the Siege community is that we will not make content that would hurt the game overall. Like come on now.
That's a sole topic with the new event.
That is very true. Okay, so we're all in agreement that personal performance probably shouldn't go into your rank or MMR gain or loss. What about this? And we touched on it a little bit there. There's a perception out there that at least later in the season, it seems like when you lose 40, and when you win, you gain 25. First of all, is that true? Or is that just a one-off that sticks out more in your mind? And second of all, is that a good system?
I mean, one of them kind of depends on. Those questions are a little
right.
into each other.
So, is that the case?
I'm just gonna look. I'm gonna give you actually like. Let's just look at my data for mine.
Okay.
I play every single day.
It does. It does seem like later in the season, it seems like once you're getting down to where you're gaining like 20 or so for a win, it seems like you lose 30, you win 20. You know what I mean, or something like that. That's the way it always feels like. But
so on my main account this season, I have what do I have? I have like 300 games, and right now we're looking at. Let's just look at the last like 10 ones. So I lost 19, lost 23, won 13. Ooh, it's true. Won 22, won 18, lost 16, lost 19, won 18, 18, 21, 30, 25.
There was a one where you won 30.
Yep.
Yeah. So it seems like it's just there's no correlation. There's not that's not true.
It depends on the team I'm playing against, right?
Right.
And on top of that, like this account that I'm looking at now has had over 600 elo forth and back this season on rollback alone.
So I think what it would have to do with, if you're somebody who's plat 2 and you're partying up with gold 1s, that is going to be true, right? I mean, it's just the matchmaking in general. It's not. It's if you're a diamond and you're queued up with a plat, and you're playing against other plats and you lose, that diamond is going to lose the most MMR in that lobby, correct? Yeah. Volatility, if they've all played the same amount of games. So I think that's what it is, probably more than anything else. I saw something the other day, and this plays into our point. I think it was Skies that tweeted out the other day, and I'm not going to get this right verbatim, but he tweeted out like, lose 100, gain 20. Well, I believe that was when I was watching Hyperstream, and they literally had 5 pros playing together, all of which were in the top 100 in the world as far as champion ranks. So you've got 5 people on a team, all in the top 100, playing against diamonds and maybe a few champions sprinkled in. Yeah, it's going to, if you lose that match, it's going to be heavily weighted against you.
But this is the thing that's super important. So if we go back to when I said that the 70% win rate you should have, right? That has to be factored in. If you are better, you have to win more than 70%, right? If that's the number we bring up. So let's say you take the 5 best players in the entire world, and they play against like some top 1,000 players. They should maybe win 80% of the time. The points should add up. So if they lose 2 out of 10, they're at a 0. They didn't gain anything. They didn't climb.
Yeah.
The idea of a matchmaking system isn't for you to climb. It's for you to play against people of your own skill.
That's an interesting way to look at that.
Why it exists.
That changes everything when you think about it that way.
Yeah, like the only spot that matters. So if we were to put this into like tournament style or something, the only spot that matters is number 1, right? For us, we aren't playing a tournament. We have matchmaking. It's about making a good match. That's the goal. That's why this exists. If it was just about climbing, then maybe it would be time investment or kills, whatever, right? But if you aren't winning more than what you're predicted to win, why should you get points for it?
Is that because I always think it's very funny when people like make these kind of tweets where they're 5 queuing as champions, they're winning against plats, and they're like, oh, we only got 2 points. Like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to go. Like, these people just don't know how the system works, or is there like, how do people imagine it should go? Because like there is no, because you defeat the purpose, just as you said, you defeat the purpose of matchmaking if you can continuously climb. I don't see how it could be different. Like, it's frustrating, but can it be different?
No, I mean it can't. But the question is if people are willing to accept it. But it's when people make that goal. I tried for a very short amount of time in World of Warcraft to have the rank 1 spot on the battle group in 5v5, and we were so the matchmaking system worked a little different there, but basically the max you could win and lose was 33 if I remember correctly, but we were so far up. Number 1 and number 2 were maybe 100 or 200 points away from everyone else, but when we won to 3rd place, we got 1 or 2 points. If we lost to 3rd place, we lost 33. Now think about how much you have to win to not fall. Mm-hmm. But we were sitting there worried about losing points. We would have to lose a lot to fall all the way down to them, right? And by the time we got to them, it wouldn't matter because then we wouldn't win and lose as much. So the points would adjust because we got closer. But because we were that far away, us losing to them had a bigger impact because we shouldn't, because we were that far away. So if you take the same in Siege and you have 5 champions playing against Plats, you should lose a lot. You really should. Of course you should. But on the other hand, if you have played, let's say, 500 games this season and you lose once to Plats, maybe it shouldn't hurt that much because the system has to, and that's why the certainty rating exists, it has to give you a little bit of leeway to just make a mistake. There are outliers. You are going to lose, and the prediction of a 70% win rate is not going to be 100%, right? Like it's damn close, but it's not perfect. So it has to allow for a little bit of, you can lose to lower levels ever so often without it hurting you too much. But they're not going to be Plat players or Plat ranked just because they lost the game to Plats, right? And I'm sure that the stack that you're referring to, they could play the entire night, they could play the entire next week, and they would not go down to that level of the team that they lost to, ELO-wise. It wouldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then the system works. Now, the problem is if some of the maybe late night tweets after a loss is more about it sucks losing and I want to keep my number 11 spot on the champion rank, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know
think,
like what you can do with it.
I think a big part of that is also that matchmaking should be a lot more strict. I think in a game where champions can play against Plats, and that regularly happens, like these games shouldn't exist in the first place. Like these are not fun for anyone involved. Like the champions are unhappy because they're afraid of losing 1,000 points if they lose, and if they win, they just stomped a bunch of Plats and got 2 points for it. Fine. And the Plats on the same side are like, well, we just lost in like Opera Select already because we can't do anything.
Right.
I feel like these games just create a lot of frustration for everyone involved. And I think this kind of stack, this hyper easily stack thing, they should not be finding games within 5 minutes. They probably shouldn't be finding games within 10 minutes. I think queue times are way too short to guarantee like real competitive close games. Because if you made that more strict, you would also get rid of a lot of this frustration that stems from people playing mismatched games.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll introduce another big problem because so I know when you do matchmaking in games, you sit down and you basically do the math on the frustration. How long are people willing to wait before they are okay with trading off the quality of the matchmaking with getting a game? There's a very fine line, and let's say you're completely happy waiting 5 minutes, but after 5 minutes you're like, okay, now we want a game. So now you got to scale. You have to imagine your matchmaking as like a blob that's leaking over time or like melting ice cream. The longer you wait, the further out that curve of search goes in both ends, right? Now but if you're in the like top end, it can only go down.
Yeah.
There's not going to be anything above. And what do we do if, let's say, Easily Stack has to wait 15 minutes and he wants to stream?
Yeah, they can't.
He's going to play on a different account.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have 5 of the best players in the world playing on different accounts to get 3-minute matchmaking. And how do you combat that? So there's I think it all goes back to like the best in the world probably shouldn't be playing ranked. Like,
well, I think let's say this. Let's say that you can't base your matchmaking system off of the top 100 players in the world.
No.
If you do, then it's not going to work for everybody. You've got to base a matchmaking system on the majority of the player base and providing good, fair matches for the majority of the player base. And if people stop looking at the matchmaking system as a mini tournament and start looking at it as a way to reward players based upon matches that might not be perfectly even, then I think that's a much better and healthier way to look at it, the MMR gain and loss. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that Sky Suite. He won 100, he lost 120, and let's say he lost 100 and he gained 20 on a loss. In that stack, is he really losing more than 1 out of every 5 games?
And on top of that, if he actually lost, let's just say 100 in in his loss. He has not played a lot of games that season. He has played less than 30, I would say. Otherwise, there's no way that you're losing.
I'm pretty
or
sure he's
winning that amount of
champion,
points.
so he's played enough to be champion.
And you're sure he didn't get rollback on top of that game?
Maybe that is the case.
Points,
Yeah, that could be the case.
Losing 100 points after that, unless maybe they were playing against like an abusive unranked stack or something, should be almost impossible.
Even if you have 5 players in the top 50 in the world?
Yeah, there's a limit to how much you're going to lose. Yeah. Because you're still only going to be against people within the range, right?
Right.
And I don't think, actually, I don't know this, but I don't think if you're 7,000 elo or if you're 6,000 elo playing against someone that is 3,400 elo, that you're going to have that much of a gap in how much elo you're going to lose there. Even you're 1,000 over, you're not all of a sudden just going to lose 500 elo.
Right.
I mean, it should be a sizable gap, though, right?
I don't think so. I really don't. I was champion one of the seasons, and we lost to a full plat stack, and I lost like 40 points.
I could be wrong too, as far as I could be misquoting his tweet, so keep that in mind as well. I don't remember the exact numbers that he was mentioning there, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's talk about that rollback now, because this was something a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's always a hot topic, and it has to do with matchmaking to a certain degree. So whenever I refer to rollback, I'm referring to a system that's in place right now to it cancels out matches that cheaters participated in. Okay, and that wording right there isn't even technically correct. Okay, I think the better way of wording that would be the MMR rollback cancels out any match that somebody who has been banned for cheating participated in that season. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were cheating in all of those matches, but they could have been, or they could have cheated one time, got banned, and now all the matches for that entire season have been canceled. But that's where we're going to go with the problem that I kind of have with it right now. I'm not sure there's a good answer, but basically, if you play against a cheater and they get banned later in the season, and that cheater beat you, then you'll gain an MMR. But if you beat that cheater, or you were on that cheater's team, then you lose MMR. So you'll log on one day and you see a notification that says you lost 45 MMR for a previous game in the season. And a lot of people have issues with that. A lot of people are seeing that they're losing. They log on and they lose MMR, and it's discouraging. But and people have asked, is there a better way of dealing with these cheaters? Should you actually lose MMR if you beat a cheater and they get banned?
I think is there maybe a problem with inflating the elo economy?
Yeah.
In a way, if you don't take away, if you only give but don't take away, you're kind of inflating everyone.
Yeah.
You would end up. It would be top heavy, correct? Because you would have people who gained MMR and nobody lost it.
Not only, that's so. The problem is if you only give back elo and you don't take elo, then you're messing up the economy. You're slingshotting people, because a match was played where a trade had to happen. Someone had to give something, or someone had to lose something, and someone had to get something. Now you just start introducing more elo in, and theoretically everyone's just gonna climb. Like everyone will just rise a bit. That doesn't do anything. It probably just dilutes the lowest ranks, which actually makes matchmaking worse, because we should still have a pretty good curve centered around like high silver, low gold. That should be like the tip of the whole curve, right? Then you have the problem of, so I guess let's explain the issues of doing it a different way. Slingshotting, let's say you could get MMR back past your max rating. You could be at 3,000 elo and you drop down to 2,500, and now you get now you climb back up to 3,000 and a couple of cheaters get banned. If you get 500 more elo now, you are way ahead of where you should be in terms of skill. And I know everyone's going to defend it and say no, because I beat the cheaters. You beat a silver player who is using aimbot and wallhack. You didn't earn it by beating them, right? It's not your like elo to keep beating someone that didn't earn that elo either. Because over a large sample size, you should be beating people that are at that skill level to climb past it. We can't justify people getting to diamond by beating a silver player who cheats in every second game just to make sure he wins, right, and climbs. Like that's a problem if you start doing that. If we don't just nullify it, and that's what people have to remember. You're not losing elo and you're not gaining elo. The match gets canceled. You just get a sign saying, that we've taken this away because this match was canceled. So this match no longer exists. I don't know if they take it away from your win-loss, if it matters on your KD. I don't think it does. I don't think that those stats change. And I think that's a very minuscule thing to worry about if someone gets banned and I get elo back. I also don't believe the story of I only lose elo. I think that's with the bad memory again. Unless we look at, again, the top streamers, of course, you have a ton of people, you're playing in the highest elo, you're way more to stream snipe with cheats than anyone else because people notice, right? You get frustrated, it's funny. So they're going to experience it more. Plus, they're always at their max elo because they play all the time, and they're really good players. So they're not really going to get anything back. This season, we talked about this just before we started, I've had over 600. I'm not sure of the exact number. When Bikini got banned, I lost 100.
Oh my God.
From his account.
Yes. Holy cow, I didn't even think about that.
So when he got banned, and he's unbanned for everyone that doesn't know the story.
But you didn't get that MMR back.
No. But I made it to 4,500 this season, and then I just stopped caring about, okay, now the Diamond Charm is secure. That doesn't matter anymore. Now I'm just playing to play. It's for the good of the ranked games and for the fun of that. I felt quite far because I got yoinked, I think, overall 300 and something elo. 100 to Bikini, and then some 50, 60 suns over a couple of days. Now, without having played ranked for a month, I think, on my main account, I'm back to 4,500. So I've gotten a good 300 points back over time.
It does make sense, right? Cheaters are more likely to be on the opponent's team because you yourself are not a cheater, right? There are 4 slots in your team, there are 5 slots in the opponent's teams.
Yeah.
So cheaters, so you should be benefiting from that, right?
Yep.
Unless you're beating them, and unless this
and
scenario.
You're not beating them, right?
Let me throw my scenario out now, because this is kind of what I think the biggest problem with it is right now. And okay, so let's say that in the first day of the season, I'm playing my placement matches, and in that match, I play against somebody, and I beat them. Okay, they're not cheating, and I end up gaining. I don't see it because it's unranked, but let's say I gain 120 MMR for that match. Okay, that person then goes on and decides later in the season that he wants to cheat. Okay, so he cheats for 5 games, gets caught, gets banned. Now all of those games that he participated in for that entire season get wiped out. And I now lose that 120 MMR because I beat him before he was cheating. Okay, now that scenario right there, I consider that a victim of the system that we have. And I don't really see a way around it. Okay, and I don't know that that's necessarily happening all that often. However, if people are being banned this late in the season, like right now, if those people are being banned, then that can mean a couple of different things, none of which are good in my opinion. Either one, the BattleEye detection is awful, and it took them this long to get caught. They've been cheating all season, and it took them this long to get caught. Okay? Number 2, it can mean that they just started cheating within the last couple weeks. And again, it's not good because that lays out the situation that I described earlier where all those matches are going to be canceled that they played on for the entire season. So which do you think is more likely?
Well, I think it's super important that we're careful with if we start another one of these stupid rumors of they have the low tier BattleEye or something like that. Right. So first of the assumption that every single match will get canceled, I don't know if that is true. I really don't know if that is actually true.
How
Because
else
if
could
someone
they
has
do
played
it?
100, you would see more change in overall elo in the ranking system. It would have too high of an impact if you have played 100 games and you get banned for cheating for one game. There is no way that it takes every single game you've played for an entire season. And if it does, BattleEye is strong enough that we don't see like massive yoinks, right? The time where we see like people lose 600 elo, it's when they've played with a cheater. It always is.
Yes, but there has to be a line. Then there would have to be a line in there somewhere. Where BattleEye would say, okay, we're banning these people and we're canceling their matches for the last 2 weeks.
Maybe, but we should never know that. Like, what it's super important that we understand that we cannot ever know that information.
Right. But at this point in the season, because I've played enough games, at this point in the season, if you get an MMR rollback and you gain, say, 100, that either that's one or two things. Either they ban 2 people and they're combining those together to get that 100 MMR, or that was a match from way earlier in the season.
What makes you think it's one match or 2 people? Why couldn't it be plus 100 minus 70?
Yes, exactly.
Plus 50 minus 20. Why couldn't it be a massive sum and you just see the number?
Okay.
Of the change.
If that was true though, you would see it. You would see the MMR rollback in waves. Like there would be like one day where you and all your friends got MMR back, and then the next day, nothing happens, and then and then another wave. You know what I mean? It would come in waves.
MMR rollback when they get banned though.
But yeah, cheaters are banned in waves usually, right? Like with how the system works, cheaters
are banned every day. There's thousands of cheaters banned every day. Well, at least there's hundreds of cheaters banned every day.
So when you see the big waves, that's normally when a new detection has come out. But it does happen in waves though, yeah. But when, let's say I play against Jeff. Jeff's cheating, right? All my homies hate Jeff, and Jeff gets banned. His name pops up on the top right, banned by BattleEye for cheating. When I get out of that game, I get elo back right away.
Yes.
So when there's a massive ban wave, and I get like 70 elo, that's more than one person.
Right. If there's a massive ban wave and you log on and you have an MMR rollback, that could mean a lot of different things. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, all you can say is we don't know. You know what I mean? But if at this point in the season, if I log on and I'm losing 100 MMR, it could be because 4 different people got banned and I beat 1 and I lost a 3, and that could be the 100 MMR is the total equation. It could also be from one person.
Sure.
I think
go ahead.
I think what's important to realize though is that it's kind of disconnect from your point, but you have no reason to believe that you are disadvantaged by that, right? Statistically, it's just as likely that you randomly gain 100 points because in your placement you played against the cheater. You don't, statistically speaking, you're not disadvantaged by that. Yeah, it sucks, but it's not an argument that the system is doing something wrong.
Right. I should also add in here that I've thought about this a lot, and I have not, and I've also put it out there on Twitter. I haven't thought of a better way to do it, and I have not seen anybody on Twitter present me with a better way of doing this. Okay, I think what I say is I consider this to be a casualty of the system that we have in place.
No, I'm with you there, Reaper. If you are at your top elo, then for 90% of people you haven't played enough yet. If you're always at your top elo, every day when you log off, if you're climbing an elo, you haven't played enough. You should every now and then be losing and be 50 points or 100 points under your max, right? If we already established that you need at least 50 matches in ranked for your rank to even be closely relevant to what skill you are, because you need a large sample size, the true skill system needs some time. There has to be way more people that get elo back and lose elo on a pretty even playing field, if not in the positive. It should mathematically always be or well, not always, but it should. You're at a way bigger advantage than you're not. You're 1 out of 10 in that game. There's an extra slot for a cheater on the other team. You might even be playing with a friend. That's more chance for the other team. Cheaters often are in stacks to protect themselves from getting TK'd too much or having the match canceled from their side and stuff, right? Like almost everything goes in your favor, unless you are a big public siege figure and people are targeting you to make it seem worse than it is. Now, what if, like, let's say there was one time, because I remember this guy got like caught, and it happened on Twitter, where this one guy had like 20 accounts he was cheating on, and for at least a couple of weeks with some of the flying around cheaters that were up in like the sky, I met probably 6 or 7 different people in game that were doing this, and I thought, damn man, like this is a lot. This was the same guy, right? It's the same guy on all of those accounts. He uploaded videos like showing it, and it's just different accounts with different names, but it's still the same one person doing it. So I had the experience that there was way more than there actually were. Way, way, way more. And it was also at the top rank, because it's pretty easy to get up there if you can fly around in the sky and headshot everyone in spawn. It's really difficult to lose, right? So that gave me a really bad, like, biased view of what the reality was. Whereas if I was to go and watch someone who was playing in maybe gold, they'd meet them every 10 games instead of every 3 games, because they climb out of it so fast. So I don't, like, isn't it a good thing? Like, if we're sitting here complaining about rollback, that must mean that at least the anti-cheat is doing something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if we're complaining more about rollback than we are about cheating,
Yeah.
then there's something good happening. And you mentioned, I think it was a cheap jab. You said maybe BattleEye takes too long to detect them. Yes, but I could say the same about every, like, police department, all crime, all bad things that happen. People that want to do bad stuff is going to be a little ahead. And the better it gets, the better they will get. It will always be cat and mouse. You're not going to find a game. I saw your video with the Fall Guys.
Yeah.
It's called Fall Guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're cheating in a party game, right? But you mentioned that it wasn't that big in Valorant, or at least in your, like, you haven't heard as much about it. Do you think it's because you play Siege? Because when I played CS, I didn't hear a lot about cheating in Call of Duty.
Right. Yeah. I do throw that into that. I include that in the video. Is maybe it's because I'm not in the right circles that I'm not hearing about it as much. And I've encountered cheaters in Valorant. I say that as well. But I guess my thinking there was, for a free to play game, and Valorant is popular. That I'm not hearing or encountering cheaters to the degree that that I thought that maybe I would in other games.
But free to play does not mean that much, depending on how you set things up. So
Right.
CS, with CS, it kind of mattered a lot. But with Riot, where you have to have a VPN for everything, like now it becomes like it's such a mess to even get there, right? For every account, like, you have to put some effort into it. The same with Call of Duty. Like, now you need a SMS code or a full phone number to have an account. They're going to find a way to bypass that as well. They will. Virtual machines are getting clapped now in BattleEye. So people that wanted to play on Linux machines through a VM can't do that anymore. I mean, fair enough, because 99% of the people that use VMs are using them for bad stuff if they're playing Siege on a VM. The majority isn't people that have a hipster computer with a VM set up to play Siege on that VM, right? It's people cheating. The same with stuff like like some of the detection methods just take time to find because they need to be broken first. It's a super simple game to play. That who do you think is going to make more? People that make the cheats, the anti-cheat developers.
Or the people who
it's
make
pretty clear. Yeah, they're going to make more. So if you're capable of doing one or the other, like if you're a good programmer and you want to make money, one of them is going to give you more money than the other. So now you have to do it out of the good of your heart. Like you are actually taking a pay cut, right? To fight the good fight. It's
Unless you're
it's
working
hard
at Google, I guess.
Yeah.
Fixing security stuff
Google
for
pays.
Well, even that, bug hunters that don't work for Google make pretty serious bucks. Pretty serious bucks. It makes pretty serious money finding bugs, right? If you're a pen tester, let's just I do luck picking for fun. It's really easy to pick most locks, and then they go out and they make a new lock and they call it pick proof, and within a week somebody picked it. It's not happening. They're like, security is just to slow things down, to make it inconvenient, and like that's the only thing we can hope for. We need to make sure that they go through so many hoops that it becomes not fun to do anymore. You're always going to get career cheaters. You're always going to get people that want to cheat to seem better. Always going to get rage hackers. If you can get the rage hackers banned quickly, so they don't like disrupt too much of the game, that's the big thing. I hope that they're going to be able to decide like how many games they think people have cheated in. That's my only real big concern.
Yeah.
Is that if you mention, like, let's say they've played 100 games and they get banned, and you can see that in the last 20 games there was like an absurd change in behavior, that those are the only games that get changed. But even if they do it, I don't think they can tell us.
Right. That's the big.
I think something like that would be possible, just on the numbers, right? Like you could tell based on the numbers. But there's also cheaters that don't cheat, obviously, in the sense that they're not cheating and getting kills. Like you can cheat having a wall hack and giving your teammates info that they shouldn't have. That's cheating. That increases your win rate, and you wouldn't really be able to tell how many games that one cheater really influenced, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I get it's somewhat similar to the discussion about whether you should include metrics such as kills, right? Because you don't know if those kills actually mattered in terms of winning the round. So I guess you're better off with a blanket solution in both cases, where you take win-loss only and you delete all games.
And that's what I think. I think this whole conversation maybe can be summed up with that. You know, the matchmaking, is it perfect? No. Are there aspects of it that can be frustrating? No. But based upon what we've said here, I think we all kind of agree that it's the best thing that we've seen so far. That what the system we have is the best thing that we've encountered so far. And the same is true with MMR rollback. Again, there's frustrating aspects of it, but I think that the way it's executed right now is I haven't heard a better idea. So I think that's really where I'm at.
No matter what we get, I don't think we're ever going to get to a place where we're going to be really happy, because there's unfair people, and it's really hard to combat that. I do want to see them, like they were talking about adding some sort of a way where you can still get points even if you're at your highest, so you don't feel too cheated.
Like a bank.
Yeah,
but
that also has to have a very, very like limited cap, right? Like let's say 30 elo. So you're at your max, you just hit diamond, you're like maybe 4,500, right? And you log in and you get 15 points back. Feels good. Doesn't like set you up against other players, doesn't like have too much like compounding impact on anything. But then again, it would really suck if that happened in a massive ban wave, you got 15 points back, and then in the next ban wave you lose 100, right?
I wonder if this is actually where you could cheat people by just pretending to give them extra points, right? Like they actually, MMR doesn't change, but they get the plus 10 to feel good.
Just the placebo MMR.
Well, I mean, actually, you could do that honestly, you could just do that with people on higher rank, because it's not going to matter too much to them. If it still impacts their uncertainty or their certainty rating, if you're looking at like the top 1,000 people, if you give all of them 10 points extra, once a week or something, that's not going to matter that much, because they're just going to lose a little bit more next time they lose to the plat stack. So maybe that would just make people happy, and they'd never notice. But I really wish we couldn't see our elo.
That would solve a lot of problems.
Year one, before you could see your elo. First off, the exciting thing of ranking up without really knowing that this was your rank up game. That feeling does not exist anymore. You get 2 points away from ranking up, and you are so worried about if you're going to win or lose, right?
Yeah.
Like oh my god, there are a lot of people that say, dude, this is my up ranking game, or my plat game, or my diamond game, and it's like, this game means no more than the game just before it, or the game after it. Even if you win or lose it, like, in the grand scheme of things, it has no more value, right? Maybe you'll get a chance at the end of the season, sure. But in year one, when and there are so many things bad about year one. Whew. But not knowing when you were ranking up felt amazing. And you never worried about ranking down because you could get so close and you would never know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know. I think that was I think it's just better not to know. You can't see it in CS.
I like having the numbers, right? Like, I like seeing the number increase. I think that's
yeah, but you don't like seeing it decrease, and that's when actual tweets happen.
Yeah.
true.
But if that happened, rollback wouldn't. Now you're not worrying about rollback anymore because you don't get to see the points. You could just get a message saying MMR has been adjusted, and nothing else. That's at least some sort of concern there. But then again, it's this whole thing with no number is ever correct or good enough, because if you get 100 points back, well, why didn't I get 150, right? And if you lose points, oh, why didn't I get points back instead? Mm. Like, there is no positive way of the rollback happening for the player ever, because you know that the foul play was in, and there's just a negative annotation with it no matter what. But yeah, I think champion rank being added and us being able to see elo made things worse, not better, for ranked. I really think it did. It overall, how people like look at elo, like, people will look at someone that is 4,600 and think they're drastically better than someone that are 4,400 or 4,300, right?
Do you think that it also increased cheating, though, like the inclusion of champion rank?
Champion 100% increased cheating. I will bet money on it. There's no way that it didn't.
Because I quite like the concept of like having that really, like, that elite tier right at the top, right? Like Challenger and League. Like, I guess Global doesn't count, right? But I don't know. I think it's really cool to be like see that goal of like that 200 players that have like their name and their rank associated to it. I think that's a really cool part of the ranked system in general.
I love the idea, but if you look at CS, and I think we talked with, I think it was Lycan with this. If you can make it to global elite in CS, that's where the game starts.
Yeah.
And there's nothing bad meant in that, but like, you get up there and you realize, oh, okay, there are still 9 million miles to go before I'm even like at a good level for like competitive or anything, right? And kind of the same with Siege. Like, sure, man, you can get to Diamond and that's good. That doesn't mean that you can go up and play against a pro team in a proper setting and do anything. You might be able to shoot back at them. I think Siege is probably one of the games where the mechanical skill level is the lowest, but like the technical skill level is really, really high, or the strategical, or whatever you want to call it. It's really easy to shoot in Siege compared to Valorant or CS. Like, really, really easy. Your guns are beaming. There's no proper predictable recoil. The spread is too random. Movement in general, like the leaning, bullet holes, all of this stuff you can do to like help yourself win a gunfight. No matter how good the player on the other team is, you're going to be able to win a gunfight against him in some scenarios, right? That's not a bad thing at all. It's just a different type of game where you have to use your utility and the map and the destruction to also win. And that's what makes them good. But if you take a global elite in CS and you put them against an actual pro in a 1v1, they're gonna struggle.
Yeah.
A lot. I could make it to global with a pistol, and it wasn't that hard. And if I ever played like Face It in ESEA against good players, I got my shit kicked in. Right? There is a big jump from the public ranking system to like the the next tier, like the third party ranking systems or the paid ranking systems. We just don't have that in Siege, and I think that's a problem. That'll fix some of the stuff with your story about the death stack of pro players, right? Like at the end of the day, why are we having pros and the world's best Siege players playing against your average Joe in ranked? It's such a foreign concept.
Yeah.
If we were to look at anything else than gaming.
I'm sure it is for people, especially coming from Counter-Strike, where there's third-party matchmaking and stuff like that. I kind of like it, and I think this is actually a good segue into one of Reaper's videos that I found to be extremely interesting, and we'll get into more of his content as the podcast goes on here. But he made a video very recently talking about why he thinks the game shouldn't be strictly balanced for competitive players. And would you want to talk about that a little bit, Reaper, and kind of go into that?
Sure. Do you want like any specifics?
Yeah. Let me just set the stage here. So obviously, there's been I've made videos about this forever. There's always been kind of a clash in Siege between the competitive community and the casual, and especially when it comes to balancing. Some people think that this operator needs buffed for competitive, but that in casual it might ruin that experience, or vice versa, or whatever. And it's very rare for somebody who has spent as much time in the competitive community like you have to come out and make such a statement saying, hey, there are other factors to consider when it comes to balancing, instead of just what's going to be good for Pro League in that competitive environment. So I guess go into it however you see fit there.
Yeah, I think like there are like mainly two arguments, right? Two things that are at play here. And the first one is that a lot of people are saying that they have this idea that if you balance for Pro League, it will automatically balance for everyone else, right? Like if the best players can't abuse something, no one can, right? So it's balanced. I don't think that's quite true. I think you can come up with operator examples, like just like constructed, I suppose true, but you can come up with examples that show pretty obviously that a operator that is balanced for Pro League is not necessarily balanced for casual play, right? Like I guess Caveira could be an option, could be like a point you could make here. That's one of the arguments, like that this kind of idea is not necessarily true. But I think the stronger one is actually that Pro League can only exist if the casual also exists, right? Like if the game dies, Pro League is dead too. So what Ubisoft I think needs to do is to maximize enjoyability, right? They should focus their decisions with the goal of maximizing enjoyability. And that's a bit, enjoyability as a term is like a bit broad, right? But because the majority of the player base is casual, and I also call like gold ranked casual, right? And plat ranked too. Those are the majority of the player base, right? So you need to make those guys happy. Because they are what's keeping the game alive, right? They are what are buying like season passes and skins. You need to keep those people alive. And it's just it's somewhat arrogant, I think, for pros to only advocate for themselves in a way. Like I understand why you would want to advocate for yourself, right? It makes a lot of sense. But I'm not a fan. I think if you take a look at like a broader look at the things and looking at the future, it's just imperative that casual players enjoy the game. And that's why
I'm sure it comes from
the game
a good
should be balanced for them.
Like I'm sure it comes from a good heart, and there's certainly sometimes some real merit to what they're saying, but you're 100% right. There's only space for so many players on the field, and there's a lot more seats to be filled around it, right? Like we need viewers, we need casual players. Pro League at the end of the day, or competitive gaming or esport, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day is only a marketing thing and nothing else. Like it only exists because there's people that want to watch it. Otherwise, it will be small local tournaments with people just agreeing to go and play against each other, and then we will say, okay, you're the best team, and that will be all, right? If it has to be a spectacle where people fly out to, or people sit at home and watch on the television, it's because people enjoy watching it, not because people enjoy competing. I will say that with how big social media is and how much influence people just in general have, when you say enjoyability, that goes to it's important that the competitive community is kind of happy, just so they're not always pissed. Because if they're angry a lot, that reflects down on all the viewers. And if you're a fan of a certain player, it's easier to take that and be like, yeah, man, that sucks, or oh, that's why they lost. The game's unfair, right? And you build this whole narrative of, ooh, if it was just balanced for them, everything would be better. But that's like you start living through the happiness of them instead of just looking at, do you actually enjoy playing the game and was it fun to watch? And then that's what you go to, right? Sometimes I don't really get why it's seen as gospel when anyone, like any of us or a pro player, streamer, YouTuber, whatever, says this thing is overpowered or this thing is too weak. It has to be changed. Sure, those people play a lot and they have some good knowledge from the game, but it's like there isn't that much credibility or credential that comes with that. It's very easy to say that something is overpowered. You don't have to give numbers. You don't have to show anything, like any evidence of you trying to do something against it. We can take the idea of the 20-second meta, right? That, okay, there's too much utility. Well, is it possible to fit enough utility in? You made a video about how Monty could, for example, help with some of it, right, on Clubhouse. I think that's a pretty good argument. I also think some bands could help with it. Your decision of not wanting to change too much to change the situation, but wanting to have someone else change it for you, is not always fair. And it's very easy. And I'm afraid that we at some point get into a place where it becomes the norm that when there's something we don't like, we want other people to change it. We have it with maps. Like, I really don't like when most people say this map is unbalanced. I don't know what it means. I really do not know, like, what factor, because it's different for a lot of maps. And people throw it around very, very easily. When we had the Lonnie Dixon on, and we talked about the whole frustration thing, right? That a lot of times it doesn't really have anything to do with the numbers. It's just, does it feel all right? And then that's where you base your decision on. I just don't want a world where your feelings about something is going to change the numbers too much if the numbers aren't bad, if that makes sense. Like, if a map plays out pretty 50-50 and it like all the sites are doing all right, I don't think that someone making an angry tweet about it and then it blowing up in a community and everyone going, yeah, we agree with this guy, should necessarily change that too much. I'm not sure that's a good thing.
Well, let me throw another aspect to this conversation out that I think doesn't get enough attention, but console. I mean, we're talking about casual versus competitive. You could almost say console, casual, and competitive. And the fact of the matter is that I think overwhelmingly the majority of players that play Rainbow Six Siege are playing it on console. And so there's another aspect of it. And that does throw a wrench in balancing. It absolutely does. I think, Cade's shotgun is a perfect example of that. Ella's shotgun is a perfect example of that. That gun was completely different on console compared to PC as far as effectiveness, we'll say. And they have different recoils between the two, but it doesn't always translate. I think another good example of that is like the F2. The F2 is unusable on console. And it's unusable on console when you're playing with a controller. We'll say that. And on PC, I think that gun is still very usable. It's not as good as it once was, but it's still very usable. So it shows how many factors have to be involved. And I think it was Sternab the other day. He said something on Twitter, and it was an honest question. Like, I'm not like throwing him under the bus here. I think he was legitimately asking this. And he was saying, give me an example of when a balance change was made to benefit the competitive community that had a negative effect on the casual community. And my reply was that the only thing that came into my head, like right there in that very second, was Glaz. And I think that for 90% of the player base, Glaz, after he got his initial buff, was in a good place. It could have evolved into a bad place, don't get me wrong. But I think that for 90% of the player base, after that initial buff, Glaz was in a good place. It was a problem in Pro League. 100% agree with them changing it, by the way, because it was too too good in Pro League. It was really good in Pro League. It might be all right now with Warden, by the way, but that's a whole different conversation. And it was changed, and now Glaz is borderline useless, I would say, for 90% of the players. And, that's always going to have to take that with a grain of salt. Maybe if you worked with Glaz a little bit more, it'd be more effective. But that's the one change that came to mind for me. I think maybe, another operator that you could look at that could have a buff could have benefited the casual community would have been Castle for years. Castle probably could have used a buff for 90% of the player base, but because he's so good in Pro League, that never happened. And again, I agree with that, but I think that just kind of plays into the point that you're talking about there.
But it's such a loaded question. Like, I don't think that's fair, because we don't know all the balance changes, and we don't know the reason for them either, right? Like, we don't know. Okay, so we know like what has changed, but we don't know exactly like why. We haven't gotten the target yet, right? That's something they want to do now, where they want to say, okay, this is to address this, or this is to address this. But to assume that all the good changes, or most of the good changes, have anything to do with competitive at all, and that it isn't just feedback that are taken from good players. And sure, some competitive players will say that this thing is bad, and a lot of other people will agree because this thing is bad overall, and therefore it gets changed. But competitive even struggle with agreeing within themselves, right? So there's going to be one person in competitive that will agree with the change somewhere. It's hard to say that it was balanced for competitive, to even state that as it being a thing. Buck, for example, we had JV, I think it was JV saying on talking about that pretty much happened after Invitational, right? Like, Buck was being used almost all the time, but is that really for Pro League, or is it for the enjoyability of watching the game? Right? Like,
I mean, now you have a situation where Sledge is everywhere, right? So
yeah,
that's one of the balance changes where I didn't really like. What exactly is this supposed to be? What is exactly supposed to change? But yeah,
I mean, it did change to where at least Buck isn't always there. Sledge
it's a real choice.
Really often there. Yeah, Sledge is really often there, but he's not there as much as Buck was.
It's a real choice now between Sledge and Buck. It was, in my opinion, in most of the situations, it was a no-brainer. You didn't look at Sledge and Buck and be like, okay, well, this one has this one has. You're like, Buck. Buck has nades. Well, Buck can go up and down, and Sledge can't.
Easy peasy. Give him hop breach when that comes out. Give him one of those hop breach things, right?
Yeah.
I think the difference was that we've had this discussion before as well with power creep. I don't believe there's power creep in Siege. I truly do not believe that there's one operator that completely nullifies the use of another, and that would be the definition of a power creep, right? An operator that
I guess not in every aspect, right? But do you want to have like that strict of a definition of power creep, where you have to be superior in every aspect? Isn't it enough to be superior in?
No, if you're superior in one aspect, well, you're not though. So, that's the thing. You're not superior in 50%, because then the other one is going to be superior somewhere else, right? Like, there's some sort of an overlap, and we don't have an operator where you can't justify bringing the other one for a scenario. So if we look at like card games with power creep, like in card games, when you have a power creep, it has more value. Done. That's it, right? If you take Buck and Sledge, you can't say that Buck can do everything Sledge can, because he just can't, right? Like, Sledge can open castle barricades, remove maestros, deployable shields, whatever. Even if Buck still had grenades, Sledge would still sometimes be useful. If they were to run mute castle, Sledge would be pretty nice, right? On piano windows and cafe. Now you can get those away without having to use your sphere charges on them. If you take Hibana and Ace, I would say definitely not, because first off, Hibana can open 3 hatches. Ace can open 1. But Ace can destroy shields, which is massive. That's something I think people kind of forget, that's actually pretty useful, that you can yeet the shields with that thing. So there's some situation where Ace is clearly better, but there's also situations where you would never take Ace over Hibana.
I think that's, like, I understand that definition, but I think it's too, like, for my taste, it's too strict of a definition of power creep. Because I would say that Ace is power creeping Hibana, because he is better in a lot of situations, right? Like, sure, on Club Power's basement attack, he would still run Hibana because you need to open the hatches. But
Mhm.
there are quite a few sites actually where you don't open hatches at all. And I feel like in most of these situations, Ace is just better than Hibana. You would just pick Ace over Hibana, and that for me would already be into the definition of power creep.
What about the things that can go wrong there, where your ability has no say in it? Let's say you're acing open. You can't guarantee that you're getting the wall open proper, right? Once there is a hole, you could get like impact trick to, like you're never getting that wall open again if there is enough utility on defense.
But
Sure,
then
we
it's
can play the
just-
whole game with how you can do things and I can do things, and we can do that forth and back. But Ace doesn't guarantee you heart breach in the level that Hibana and Thermite does. I can decide with Hibana to make a crouch hole, and it's gonna be there if I stop them from tricking the wall. I can't do that with Ace. I can throw both of my charges, one impact can come through, and now I cannot use my Ace charges again. And I've just created like 2 lines, and that's all. Sure, you can get the sight lines, but I don't think, and I guess we're gonna have to wait and see how it actually plays out. But I don't think you're gonna see Ace be as strong as people think he is, because there's too much the defenders can get out of that hole when it happens. There's a lot of counterplay you can do. You can't reliably play out there, because if you make it high, you can throw C4 out while being in cover. If you make it low, it's too easy to impact trick in the future. You just throw it at the ground and it'll get anything that ever goes on that wall again. And even that, like, I think maybe Mav, you could argue, would be like a power creep to Thermite, because even if it's electrified, he can still just deal with it. But you can still, like, there are ways to kill him, right? Like the C4 on the floor, shoot him for the hole itself. You can shoot 2 meters on either side of the actual hole, and he only has 2 meters range, so you can always shoot a Mav if he's Maving it, no matter where he is, unless he's repelled, of course. But I don't know, like, I think it's cheap if we can call it power creep if you just want to use it a little bit more than the other, because then Sophia is power creep and Ashe. Without
which
a
I
doubt,
would
like,
agree. I would agree.
yeah, but you don't have the flashes.
Yeah, like, sure, but
Right?
you have other things, right? It's just on average, I think that Sophia is better than Ashe, which in my definition makes her power creep Ashe.
Especially when you look at them on
definition,
release.
right?
If you to play into this a little bit, you look at Hibana on release. That's a different operator than what we have now. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You look at Zofia on release. She had 2 more concussions, correct? Am I right? Am I right in thinking that she launched with 4 of her
No,
concussions?
3, right?
Was
She
it 3 or 4?
4 and 2. I think at the beginning she had 4 and
Was
2,
it
and
4
she
and
got down to 3 and 2, and now she's 2 and 2.
Okay.
So I think if you look at Zofia with 4 of the concussions and 2, then yeah, that is 100% power creep over Ashe. But
Just not per definition.
well, I don't
Like,
think
there is an
I don't
actual
know that I would
definition
even say that Zofia currently has power creep over Ashe, in the sense that I think that Ashe has a better gun. Personally, I think the R4C. I mean, you know, it's going to come down to opinion, but I think the R4C is the easiest weapon in the game to use, personally. And then the fact that she has flashes means that she has more ADS clearing capability than what Zofia does. So I don't know.
Isn't it cheap to still call that power? So there was an important thing with power creep when it comes to card games, is that it nullified your deck.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I had a deck with a 4/2 card in it, another card would come out with the same, like the cost the same, but it would be a 5/2. That is clearly just always a better card, right? Like, no matter what, it costs the same, but it does more. That's power creep. In Siege, where you have 5 operators to pick, there are legitimate times where I definitely want an Ashe over a Sophia. If I need to breach something that is really far away, I want an Ashe, because it might be too difficult to get the straight line of sight with Sophia. Maybe I need the flashbangs, right? Like, there are certain times where, like, you want the other one, so it doesn't nullify the other. I will say I think Sophia is better than Ashe most of the time, but that doesn't make Ashe not viable anymore, right? And I just think it's a cheap thing to use power creep when it refers to things that are like completely removing the need or any kind of merit of ever using whatever was before it. Because like that's what it means, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I guess you have to like specify your definition of power creep first before making a statement then. But like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess there is a dictionary definition, but I don't know about that.
No, it just comes from card games where they would make new card box or
Yeah,
new
like,
card
sure.
things where with higher value that would
like
nullify what you could do before.
Like not everyone would like. Not everyone shares. Like we don't share the same definition of power creep, right?
No.
So it just comes down to definition. And like, yeah, sure. With your definition of power creep, like Ash is not, or like Sophia is not power creeping Ash. It just comes down to definition, I think. And like, I don't need to call it power.
I think what maybe Alex is saying, like if you can still choose between both deployable shields, that would be power creep. Why would you ever choose the old deployable shield that doesn't have a slit in it compared to the new deployable shield that has a slit in it? Like, there's no choice there. That's 100% power creep. And maybe we'll see. And I think that you can make that case like if Hibana came out and there was literally no need to bring a thermite anymore, then that would be very clear power creep. But the fact that I think that what we're seeing in the game is that there's operators that do things differently, and in certain situations, those are going to be better. But I don't know that I don't know. It's tough. We might see that with the new Tachanka rework. Honestly, that could be an instance of power creep compared to smoke. You know what I mean? Like where smoke used to be the operator that you would bring to deny area late, and then now Tachanka is going to come, and instead of having to throw it, he can launch them indirectly. He can bank them off of walls and stuff. So why would you ever bring the smoke?
Can't wait to see how that works.
So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I thought it was really interesting. Like, do you think that most pros get that? Like, do you think that pros grasp the concept of, listen, if nobody's watching Pro League, then you don't have a job?
No, all of them are self-centered brats. No, obviously not. But I do feel like there are some self-centered people in Pro League. I would agree to that.
Yeah, I mean,
and it makes sense, right? Like if you're gonna play Siege with like, and you really hate the 20-second meta, which I don't, but I can see why people would, and you have to play it every single day, and you really think it's broken, it's frustrating. I can see that definitely.
This might upset people, but I talked to someone. I'm not gonna say who it is because that doesn't matter. But someone that also plays at a decent level the other day, and there's a fun thing in Siege where when people actually get to the point where they should be taking it serious, it seems like they're taking it less serious. And I don't mean that they aren't practicing, but that they aren't looking at it as being a job where you have some responsibilities, not just to win or perform, but to just accept that certain things are not yours to choose. They're just not. If you're a comp player, the only thing you should worry about really is what you can and can't do with the meta right now and what the changes that you know about in the future that might happen. That should be your only concern. You can share your opinions, but making it like a big thing to try and change them is probably putting energy the wrong place. If you could sit down and dedicate all your energy to finding out how to be the best at what exists right now or create the next new thing, that's probably a better way forward. And some of the absolute top teams are definitely doing that, but there is a lot of trailing teams that are trying to get there that don't even try. Like all they're doing is they're looking at what's happening and then they're trying to do that to the same level that it's being done at. And I think that's a really lazy way of trying to compete. And once you finally get there, then it's now everything's achieved because now you're signed, you're ready, everything's good, and now you just play. Then you do angry tweets left and right about if this thing has to change, if this thing has to change, but you're choking the people out that are actually like trying to watch you. The community that wants to be hyped up and excited about it, like I want to know that the competitive people are doing it out of passion and they really want to win and everything, putting all my energy into it. I don't want to read 10 different tweets saying this operator is broken, this map is shit, this is this, it makes the viewer sit there and go, yeah, this is shit, right? And those are the people at the end of the day that are the reason that there are sponsors willing to pay your org, so your org can pay you. Like, all of that really matters. It's one big, very, very important ecosystem. And you can't try and scare away the players or upset the community too much when you're at that level, especially not if you have ways of directly communicating. Whether you're being listened to or not, the public things like creating petitions and stuff do not work. They just don't. They if anything, they slow things down that are already happening, right? Like making a petition saying, oh, you need to do something against cheating. The only thing that'll end up doing is make some community people somewhere sit down and have to have a meeting about, oh, the numbers are increasing here. We got to talk about this. Jeff, are you working on the cheating? Yeah, we're working on the cheating. Can you do it faster? Nope. Okay. Like it doesn't make things faster. You can cancel things, sure. Like massive community outrage can sometimes cancel changes or stop things, and sometimes they're definitely warranted. But if we want to be taken serious and listened to, we got to be really careful about when we like cry wolf. If the outrage is always worth or at that level, right? And then if people actually agree, like I don't know if they're still doing it. We used to have map votes in comp where the competitive players would like vote about what maps are actually being played, right? There's a very big bias there, like very big bias.
Yeah.
Because if, let's say, team number one really likes Border and everyone else hates it because team number one force ban or gets everyone to force ban Border against them, then Border's going out. That's might not be that fair, right?
That's pretty much exactly how it worked back then.
Yeah, then you can vote a map out that one team is just so much better at than anyone else, and now you handicap that team. In my eyes, that should just be at the sole discretion of the people running the show. And it's going to be horrible for the people playing, and I don't really care because I'm a spectator. I don't care if they like the maps they play on. I just want to see how good they can get at it.
Yeah, watching Pro League on new maps is so fun. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's what's not fun is to watch Pro League on the same map over and over again. But I think that like one thing that I want to touch on that you mentioned right there is the repetitive or the copycat nature of Siege. And I think that you were mentioning it as far as Pro League teams, but I think that it trickles down into ranked as well. And I've talked about it on here that 9 times out of 10 in ranked, in gold and plat, when you see a Thatcher ban, they're banning it because they think that's the right thing to do. They have no idea how to institute a plan that will actually take advantage of that ban. Okay. But another aspect of this, and this kind of goes into like a lot of the content that you made, and specifically a recent video that touched on Villa, how Reaper made a video recently talking about on Villa the bathroom hold being really strong right now. So for anybody who's not familiar, I'm referring to the bathroom up on in like master bedroom. So there's that bathroom like closet area. No, I'm saying bathroom closet would be the correct definition, right? That's the actual call out.
Okay. Bathroom is a big part of it, right?
Yeah, bathroom's a different part, but master bedroom closet. So in closet, it's basically like, well, I'll let you explain it, but it's something that we have seen the pros do a little bit, but people are just kind of catching on to it. Villa's been played competitively for how long? It's been ranked for how long? And here we are, 2 years? Is that a fair statement? 2 years after the map was released, and we're finding out this or this aspect of it is really becoming more popular, and we're breaking it down. But go ahead and explain your thought process there with how strong the closet is.
Yeah, it's basically like just an extension of Jaeger Warmai, right? Really strong at the moment, everywhere, on every map, to be honest. But it's just that you can, obviously, the effect of Jaeger Warmai is increased by playing them together and by stacking everything together, right? So what people are doing is they play in closet and they just stack every ADS in closet. They ban Thatcher and they stack all of the Warmai magnets also in closet. And that just makes it very, very difficult for teams to clear it, because it's not just closet you want to clear, you also want to clear different parts of the map, right? Like aviator below, I don't know. And it's very difficult at the moment for teams to clear both at the same time. And this creates like a pretty strong strategy where teams have to make concessions somewhere, and it's usually not looking good for the attackers in that situation. I think like I based on the rounds I checked, I think this hold has a 70% win rate,
Wow.
with the other ones being just below 50. Like with the other variants of the set you hold, just below 50%. And there's some bias in there, right? Because, for example, Secret, it was played a lot against Team Secret, who didn't win a lot of rounds, so it might be biased. But yeah, it does seem to be a very strong hold at the moment that really utilizes like Goyo Jaeger.
And I guess playing back into what I was saying about copycat is like, why didn't a ranked player or a pro team establish that hold earlier? Do we need to get out of this mindset?
But they did.
Okay. Why isn't it more common? And I guess is what I'm saying is like, why? First of all, like Statue, if you watch Pro League right now, a lot of teams don't even play Statue. You know what I mean? Like there's lots of teams that won't even go to Statue. And I don't know. I guess that I think that like the copycat nature that we're seeing in Siege from the pro teams all the way down through ranked is stifling a lot of the creativity that could exist, and maybe even the skill threshold to a certain degree.
I think the problem is that we look at, like, we should look at competitive as its own closed capsule of things happening. We can learn from them, but we shouldn't take what happens there into our game and then assume that that's going to work the same way. I think that's a really both unfortunate thing that people do to themselves, because they're like really stopping themselves from actually learning stuff. Just putting up like a special set of reinforcements that you saw in Pro League and not really understanding why is this rotate here. Like what's the point of what you should be doing with this, right? And what are the downfalls? Like the closet hold is really good, but if Capital is in play and you can make it to the single panel outside bedroom, you can force that guy out 100% of the time if you just do it early in the round. Because Wamai will only have 2 magnets by that time. Even if you are a little slow and he has 3, you only need 1 fire to land it like right in the middle of closet, and it will force him out. Because you can hit the beam up in the top, and it's perfect. He has to leave. And then you can kill him from bathroom window, right? But it means that you have to be dedicated enough to first have the right operator, go there in the right time, not be shot from like study window or outdoor. So there's quite a lot of stuff that has to line up. But if you can't do that, then it breaks instantly. And
yeah,
that's what happens in ranked. You go and you play Closet, you forget either Wamai or Jaeger, and you just play Ella Shotgun in there. And Ella is saying, okay, I've set it up, and now there's rotate holes into sight, and the Closet is open, and your Smoke's still running around trying to set up all the other stuff that needs to be, right? And your Bandit goes, no, I wanted to trick, and now he reinforces the wall. And now your entire setup broke. You picked an operator to play a certain spot, nothing adds up, your ADSs are placed all in Astro, underneath the window, I don't know. And then you get naded in Closet, and you go, oh, I saw this in Pro League, it's good.
Here's what actually happens in Plat Ranked, okay? You set up the perfect Closet hold, and you hold Closet. But Ash crouch walks up Astro stairs and kills the entire other team. So you're in a 1v5, you're sitting in Closet in a 1v5 with Wamais and ADSs stacked around you. Nobody even broke the window, but your entire team is dead and they have complete site control. That's what ranked looks like.
At least you can stat pad in Closet.
Right.
Yeah.
I think copying, like learning from the strats is really, really good. And I think your video is the go-to if you're like a sweaty rank stack and you just want to learn a few like good holes and the way to do it, because you're really good at explaining what ifs. And that's the important part, because it's so easy to set up something that kind of makes sense on paper. But there are so many factors, right? Mm-hmm. Like people will set up strats where you need 5 people alive. Just throw that one out the window. There's no point. Like if you need 5 people, it's a bad strat, because someone is gonna die, and you need, like, everything needs to be built basically in the opposite order, right? Like if you want to attack, well, figure out where do we want to plant the diffuser, and then you build out from there. Like, what do we need to get there? What do we need for the next step, and the next step, and the next step? If it's you go here, hold that, you go here, you go here, you go here, and then once all of this is done, then you all do this. At some point, you're going to run into the problem of the guy holding 90 is dead. Now, does the plan still work, or do you have to do something completely different, right? Like, if I think it was Lycan that said it as well, that like, a lot of the play happens just in game, and you can make some pretty decent plans, but you're gonna have to be able to just think on your feet, no matter how good the setup is, no matter how good your strats are, especially on attack, because you might not have enough info going in. And in rank, it's a really big issue, especially if you solo queue, to try and do fancy stuff.
Oh my god! Don't even get me started.
Well,
but
you could be doing it perfectly, but you can really screw over your team by you trying to do a good play, right? Like all of a sudden you have a hole at a certain spot and someone else dies from it because you forgot to say it, or they don't understand why it's there, whatever, right?
But to play into that a little bit, on the other side, I did have something where, and granted, I'm talking about a one-off, okay? But this was 100% taken from Pro League, okay? Sticking on Villa, I talked my team into, and I was solo queuing, I talked my team into holding Library instead of going to Kitchen. And I went into Aviator, and I barricaded all of Aviator, and I put the holes in Vault looking down into Library, and I got like 3 kills from up there. Now, okay, it's a one-off, okay? But I think more here's what I think won us that round more than me going up there to Vault and playing holes is I think in ranked, making teams attack sites that they're not as comfortable with or as familiar with is stronger than your best setup on the more familiar sites sometimes. I see that a lot on Coastline. I feel like Coastline, Gold Plat teams, they know how to attack hookah. Okay, now a hookah, I'm not saying don't go to hookah, okay, but there'll be times where if you send somebody even to Penthouse, I know Penthouse has a bad reputation, but teams aren't as comfortable attacking that. If they are, and you're defending Penthouse, you're in trouble because there are inherent flaws that Penthouse has that can make it really difficult to defend. But a lot of teams are going to be expecting you to go to Kitchen or hookah. They're not going to be prepared for Penthouse. They're not going to have the operators maybe that they would normally bring if they knew they were going to Penthouse. And it can throw people off big times. I think there's a lot to be said in rank to going to offsites. As long as it doesn't require, like you were saying, like if you're going to an offsite and you're like, listen guys, we can hold this site as long as you do this, you do this, you do this. No, if the idea is, hey, we're going to go to the offsite, I've got a simple little line of sight that I think can throw them off. I think that is like gold in ranked.
The numbers are not going to be with you on that one though. Like if that site is good enough for you to win, it's going to be good enough for you to win. Like in general, like you can play that site in rank and still win. Sure, them not knowing how to attack it definitely has something to do, but then you also don't know how to defend it. So you're both just at a loss.
Yeah, I think I would agree with the general statement if you restricted it to 5 man where you actually like know what everyone's doing, right? I think if you're in Plat and you're a 5 man stack, you always play together, and you come up with a living like library strat, I think that makes sense. I think there you really get the effect where attackers just don't know what they're doing, and if you played it like 5 times over 5 days, you kind of start to understand what's going on. I think I would agree with that. I think in that sense it makes sense to play offsides. Not quite sure if it makes sense to play like solo queue offsides. I think then you might as well just play the default side because both teams don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think numbers wise, like if we look at Old Oregon with Tower, that was a really good example of, or Chalet, because that is still exists right now. Chalet top floor, it's actually really difficult to attack for most people because they have to climb up ladders, and you can't shoot back. So office ladder can be held from where like you can see people just when they're on the vault or the whatever you call it, getting off the ladder. The same with bathroom one, the rappel and balcony, right? Like there's many things that make it difficult for you to actually get there. So it requires some steps before you can get there that aren't easy to just do. It requires a little bit of help from other people. Whereas kitchen, wine cellar, pretty simple. We all know, like even if we're solo queuing and we don't have any communication, somebody probably needs to help get some stuff off the wall so Therma can open it, and then we can smoke and plant, right? But getting up top floor is a whole different beast. because you have to be inside the map or you have to get stuck on the ladders. So it's a really weird offside.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is really good if you're a 5-stack. Really good. It is absolutely horrendous if you're solo. Like, if you go up there and you have 2 or 3 people that run out roaming, you are losing that side unless the roamers just melt everything. But if you're a 5-stack and you play super bunkered on site and you don't allow them to climb up, you're winning like 80 or 90% of your games, even in Diamond, playing like top 4. You are really winning a lot of rounds.
Yeah, I think
Even against 5-stacks.
another example of what you're talking about there is Blue Bar on Coastline. We were talking about this before we went live. Like the worst words you want to hear if you're solo queuing on Coastline is, "Hey, let's go Blue Bar instead of Kitchen." And it's like, no. And again, it's you understand like Blue Bar has potential to be a good site if properly set up, but my confidence and my 4 randoms setting up Blue Bar effectively is extremely low. And even me setting it up, I don't necessarily, I have like a base concept of what I should do, but I don't really know how to play Blue Bar. So yeah, I think that's absolutely true in that sense.
It's actually fun how the sites are getting automatically dictated with which ones are the best, because we actually have pretty low info on that.
Right.
Like in general, we have Pro League, which is assuming that what we are seeing is the best way to play, which it probably isn't. Let's be fair. In general, even like the most winning strat is probably not the best way to play it. It's up there, but there's going to be some sort of thing you can do to make it not the best thing anymore, right? And that definitely does not trickle down. Like the way it's being held there with that level of communication, exactly those ups, everything in that pixel perfect position and done right, does not work just one step down the ladder, right?
Well,
to the same level.
And let me throw another thing at you guys here, like, because regarding the stats on site picks, I would like to make the argument that the only stat that should be considered for how strong a defending site is when it's played in the first round of the map. Because couldn't you make the argument, let's say on Consulate, for example, the lobby site, okay? Let's say that a team wins Garage, a team wins Upstairs. They're now up 2-0, and now they're going to their third site. The fact that they're up 2-0 already, wouldn't that lead you to believe that they're a good team? I mean, again, there's a lot of factors that go into here, but doesn't that skew the stats when you're looking at sites? Because, and I'm not saying this is true 100% of the time, but a lot of times the off sites, teams aren't going to them unless they have to go there because they won their first 2 sites. And if they won their first 2 sites, doesn't that give you an indication that they might be the better team to begin with? So therefore, if they go to that third site and they win it, and then you look at that third site and you're like, man, the win percentage on the third site is 75%. Well,
you don't need that. You just need numbers, because it'll automatically be played less. If you're saying it's only ever being played as the third site, it will just be played less, because less teams will win 3 rounds in a row.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have the skewed, like if we're talking about pick rate and stuff, like if we go Consulate, I might not need a Thermite for attacking top floor. But on first round, I'm bringing something to guarantee we can get garage door or garage wall open, because I don't know where they're going. So if they go lobby on the first round, I have a Thermite. He's not useless, but he has less to do.
Right.
And then they go top floor in the next. So I'm forcing the Thermite in for 2 rounds just to finally get it on basement. And then now I have the setup I actually want. Because it used to be always basement first, and now it's always top floor first, at least in EU and the ELO I play in. It's always top floor first, right? And a year ago, it was always basement first. And if you start lobby, everyone's confused. But I don't think that over thousands of games played, if we don't look at our experience, but we look at the actual numbers of how many times does this site get won and how many times is it played, then I think we have good enough data on it. I'm sad we don't have it, though. I would like to see that data. We got a little sneak peek into some of it when we had, was it Matt that was on with or who talked about the yacht win percent? Was it, maybe that was JB? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I
But
remember
yacht
what you're
was
talking
the
about
most
though.
balanced site, or most balanced map.
Yeah.
When we're talking about sites, right? Like win percent is almost 50-50 on all the sites. But I don't know if that is a good or a bad thing, because it should be a little easier to defend than it is to attack. And it's like, oh, is it good that everything is 50? Or is it okay to have like very difficult sites that you can really master? Because if everything's 50 at like normal level of play, then it probably isn't at high level of play. That's kind of the idea of, if things are just balanced for Pro League, they might not be good for casual community, and things that are good for casual community might be really good for Pro. I think if you're looking at like around plat and the normal win percentage of sites, and if we compare that to Pro League win percentage of site, I don't think they add up as closely as we might expect.
Yeah, I think we'd see some very weird stuff in plat win percentages, like certain sites, like especially Chalet, right? Like, assuming like Chalet is one of those examples, right? Like top floor, if it was still played in Pro League, like was it ever played in Pro League actually? Chalet Master?
Yes.
Like, because I can't remember.
It was, and I think it was actually won as well most of the times.
Okay, but I think
it was
like,
rare.
if it was a common site, right, it would not be won very often in Pro League.
Yeah, probably.
But I think at the same time, if Master defense was common in plat, it would still be won a lot more than if it was common in Pro League.
I think that's true. I think that's true. You can just say that on defense in general. Like in plat, defenses are easier to win. You're much more likely to have a good defensive team than a well-coordinated attacking team. I think that's a truth that you can say almost universally in plat.
I mean, I also think that's fine, right? I think that's also fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the nature. It's the nature. I think attacking requires more coordination than defense, personally.
Well, even if you are equally good on both sides, you have more win conditions on defense.
Yes.
So you would have to be like weaker players in general if you lose on defense, and then you're probably losing on attack as well, right? Like it's you should really be winning more defenses in general than you win attacks, just because it's defender favored in overall.
Yeah,
and
but it doesn't need to be defender favored,
us,
right? Like if we wanted to, we could make it attacker favored. I just don't see a point, right? I think it doesn't really matter if the game is like 60,
I think it's really hard for you to make it attacker favored.
I think if the game is attacker favored, it feels oppressive. Personally, I think that if the game is attacker favored, then as a defender, you feel it's much less enjoyable than it is if the game is slightly defender favored. Personally.
Yeah, not only that, but you say just add more windows. I like, even if you just add more windows, you might just break it where attack just wins like 90%, right? It's very difficult to. Well, yeah, but it's very difficult to nudge those numbers a little, especially when we're just sitting here thinking like, well, what if we give all attackers one grenade? Just everyone has one grenade. Even the ones that already have two get one more, right? If that happened, we're probably not going to see that much of a change in win rate, because most people don't get that much out of their utility when we're looking at overall rank, right? Like a lot of it is just done. And if we look at comp, if you want to nudge win percentage of a site by like 5%, how accurately can you do that without doing it by 25%, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't think those numbers are as easy to move around as we think. And I think once you just get close to 50, you have to be kind of happy there, because all changes could drastically go the other way.
Well, I think it's common. Well, I don't know about common knowledge, but it's a fact that the most attacker-sided meta we ever had was Lion's heyday, and we're talking, I want to say like 1 or 2 percentage points. So even as strong as Lion was, that only nudged it, and you gotta think it was Lion, Ying, Glaz, right? That was that meta.
And that doesn't even count, because the highest percent win rate was still when Lion wasn't played in the Lion meta. So, like that skews the whole thing a little. Yeah, when Lion wasn't banned and wasn't played, Just the fear of him having
I gotcha.
the possibility of being there, I assume, and then having like more actual utility over that. That could also be because it was the better teams that didn't necessarily need it for those sites. So the data on it is very, right? It can go, like, it's super small sample size generally. Like even a full season is still not that much data in terms of how good things are. Because again, we were assuming that everything's being done right. And that's really difficult. Some numbers we just have to kind of like bank. Open area for a long time had a higher win percent than any other side. If it was that much better, we would have seen it played more. We just had a low amount of data on it, right? Like there wasn't that many teams that were playing it, and the ones that were good at it. But I think if you look at open area in ranked, that's probably not true. Or maybe it is, and it's high because it's not played a lot.
Yeah.
But if you start playing it a lot, then it's probably going to drop a lot. It's funny with what sites automatically become the default when we play ranked.
Penthouse was the default for a long time on Coastline.
Penthouse was the default in comp as well.
Yeah.
And I insist that it was wrong back then too, right? Like obviously meta was different back then.
Same.
But I insist that Penthouse was bad even back in the day. Like Blue Bar would have been insanely better. Hookah 2, Kitchen, either case. Theodore was trash back then too.
Okay, so what makes Penthouse bad?
Yeah.
It's mainly the fact that you don't have any space.
You don't have any space? I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah, you don't have any space as a defender, like in both of the sites. You can't deny plants. You can't deny window plant. You can't deny master bed plant. Consistently, at least.
The only thing is from underneath. That's the only option you have for denying either of those plants.
Not consistent in
right.
And even know about that.
For me, it's just retakes. You have one door that you can reliably go back to site in. One. And that's all.
Yeah.
And that's in an indestructible hallway where you have very little play. If you lose VIP balcony, you pretty much lose the round unless, like, again, there's all of these what ifs if the guy gets shot, blah blah blah. But once you lose big window on the VIP bulk, you can't really move anymore. Unless you play the wall open and you have people in pool, and then, well, now you can plan on the window, and you get into these. Now we get into comp strats where you're playing very spread out and you have good teamwork and good communication and control and stuff. In rank, that isn't a thing. And there's probably someone who reinforced the wall that you wanted to open anyway. I think all sites need at least three like entries, and the same with all floors. There needs to be freeways up and down.
Maybe it works as the key to a Penthouse hold because he can come up the hatch.
Yeah, in front of
the window. And die to the BB that's holding the angle on the window.
Actually, I think you can chill hanging on that hatch and they can't see you from the window.
I think you're right. I think
you might be able to.
If you could throw and give Orcs Nitro Cell and allow him to throw it while hanging on the hatch. He hangs on the hatch with one hand, chucks the Nitro Cell up above the bed so he gets the VIP wall plant. That's what we need.
I mean, at that point, couldn't he just do it from below the hatch?
I don't know. Could you make that arc? I don't know.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
But it would look beautiful having someone just dangling from the hatch while going into lobby.
It'd be a lot cooler, if you were hanging on a hatch on it. But yeah, then you've got that huge. It's still not going to work. You've got that huge door down there, the front door. If the attackers open that, you can't hang on that hatch. So there goes my plan.
I wonder what dictates it though. Like, how do we like decide what's the best sites? Because it's really difficult if you just look at overview, and if you just look at it from the start, it's really difficult to say which site is going to be the strongest and then be right all the time. It's very easy to have been right on one or two and then say, oh, on this map I was right, or on this map I was right. But in general, it is really difficult to properly assess a map, even when you've destroyed everything from an early, like it has to play out for a long time. I think once it's played out, it seems like it's mainly we just do what they do in comp because they probably did the work for us.
Well, you look at Outback. Outback's never been played in comp. Why are the top two sites in general thought of as the first two that you want to go? One thing that I would say is that if I can go there's a little bit of a bias for me for a top floor site because the thinking is they can only come from one direction. If you're on a top floor site, I guess they can open up your floor. Again, in ranked, you're not going to see that as much as people will open up above you for some reason. But if you're a middle floor site, they can come from below, they can come from above. So maybe for me personally, the first objectives I'm going to look at are the ones that are on the top floor, and then I'm gonna work my way from there.
Seems fair. Whereas I think the most intuitive thing would be that if you have 3 floors, it will always be the middle floor that's the strongest because you have more space to choose how you defend.
Sure. For like a aggressive roam or something.
Well, you have more ways up and down. You can just there's more freedom. If you get pushed out of something, you can leave and go somewhere else.
I think especially up is the important thing because you can continue holding the site from above. Because I guess that I don't know the name of it, but like the site on Outback that is like next to garage but ground floor.
Compressor.
A compressor.
I think there's a free compressor, right? I'd say that's probably a good site because you can hold above. That would be. And speaking in a trolley context, because you can actually you set something up top floor, you fight, you contest, you fall back, can still win probably.
It also has a vault or a bunker. Like the whole gift shop area is completely indestructible, and generally all sites that have that automatically become pretty strong because you have some sort of a place you can play where no one can kill you unless they are like face checking you on a door. It's the same with initiation, right? On theme park, having that like indestructible floor there, or freezer and cafe, like all of those places where you have something where you can guarantee that you're not just dying from someone opening the floor while you're on a cam, is pretty comfortable. I don't know if they boost win rate that much, but you definitely gravitate towards them as a player to have those like extra safe areas.
Yeah, I think in general you also gravitate towards basements, right?
Yeah.
Partly because of the same reason. Because I think it is possible, on some maps, to easily tell what's good. For example, on Oregon, it's pretty obvious that basement is really good. If you look at Clubhouse and you don't know anything, it's pretty obvious that basement is pretty good. But there are, of course, also sites where you just can't tell at all. Like, for example, you can't I don't think you can tell if statue or aviator is better on Villa. If you had no info. It's probably very difficult. Yeah. Probably very difficult also to tell apart Oregon kitchen dining and kitchen meeting. Yeah. That's pretty difficult. And I, by the way, I do believe that kitchen dining is better than kitchen meeting. But I am certainly in a minority opinion as of right now at the moment. Maybe I need to make a video about that.
All right,
I think you're right on that one, though.
Speaking of your videos, let's make sure people are aware of where to find you, Reaper. You're on YouTube as well as Twitch. We'll have both of those channels linked down in the description, as well as your Twitter. Anything else that you want to shout out while you're on here?
I'm fine actually.
Well, seriously, anybody watching that wants to see in-depth breakdowns of certain strats or objectives and stuff, Reaper's the man for that. I can't suggest his content enough. If you have that type of mind where you're interested in that, then seriously make sure you go check it out. Again, the links will be down in the description. Anything else you want to say there, Reaper or Alex, for that matter, before we wrap up here?
I have a little question.
Yep.
How long does it take you to when you make those videos? How long does one of those take? Because it looks like a lot of effort to do everything with that quality.
I think a minute of video is about 2.5 hours of work. So it would be 30 hours for a 10-minute video. I think that sounds all right. Like writing a script, recording. And actually, what takes the most time is finding B-roll footage to have behind. It's actually writing the script and recording is really easy, and editing is also kind of nice. But finding the footage to lay behind the video, that's actually...
I can imagine.
It's difficult. But yeah, I'd say 30 hours for a 10-minute video.
Well, that puts things into perspective of... that makes sense why the quality is as high as it is. Damn, that's impressive.
Yeah. For sure, man. Well, guys, make sure you're checking out Reaper. Really appreciate you coming on, man. It's enjoyable to sit down and talk to you. I guess for anybody watching, by the time this goes live, I think the EU major will have started and the NA major is this Friday. So make sure you're tuning into that to watch some good Siege action. And with that said, we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me.